Welcome to the Let's Eat Grandma Career Warrior Podcast.
Absolutely. Well, I think, of course, to kind of tie it to current events, of course, we are still very much in the middle of a pandemic. It's a tough time. It's really affected the job market and employment. And naturally, people are desperate to find jobs. We still have bills to pay. We have lives to maintain. And in that situation, of course, I think we're not always thinking about the fact that we have some power, right? We can take that time to do that research. And especially now where, again, there is that desperation. Unfortunately, there's
Right.
people that are going to take advantage of that, right? And so we're seeing a lot of job scams happening right now during the pandemic. People creating fake recruiter accounts on LinkedIn, posting fake job descriptions on websites and whatnot, and people are getting tied up in that. And so I thought about this
Sure.
topic of encouraging people to do background checks because I don't want to see people to fall victim to that, right? That does happen. And I think when we're looking for a job, we're like, okay, let me just hop on the first job that invites me to come for an interview or sends me a job offer, and not realizing that we have all these resources at our disposal to ensure that it's actually
Yeah.
legitimate,
Can I
right?
ask, why do you think people are scamming job seekers? Like, why specifically job seekers, and what are they
Mhm.
doing to scam them?
Well, what we're also seeing is the money aspect, right? So what we're seeing is, let's say, for example, you're on LinkedIn, and let's say you're a job seeker, you're months in, it's months in the pandemic, you haven't found a job, and you get a message, let's say, from someone that looks like they're a recruiter, they have a full profile and everything. They send you a job description, you read it, you're like, this sounds great, how do I get in? How do I interview?
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, well, actually, to we have a lot of people in the running. Just send us, a quick money transfer, or send us a gift card, or something silly like that. And it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense, right? But when you're so focused on finding this job, you're like, oh, well, you know what? That seems like a really good deal. Let me just pay $100 and I'm more likely to get this job interview. And people fall for it, unfortunately. And afterwards, you're like, oh, no, it wouldn't be me. But, you'd be surprised at the number of people that fall for something like that. And so I think, again, it's just important to kind of step back and say, you know what? Let me research this. Does it actually make sense? But I think, again, scams aside, yes, that's one thing, and pandemic
Sure.
aside, but you should always be looking to see if a company is legitimate, and if it aligns with your personal values, right? It's
Sure.
a two-way relationship, and similar to how I assume most people would in a romantic relationship, you'd ask around, you kind of see if anybody's heard of the person, maybe do a bit of a creep on social media just to see. You should take that same process and apply that to your job search, just to make sure, again, that the employer is who they say they are, and they align with the values that you uphold as a human, as a person, and so that it's a good fit in both ways.
Yeah. Okay. So in this case, you would say Google is your friend,
Oh,
correct?
Google is your absolute best friend in this case. So I always recommend start off with a Google search. It's the easiest
Yeah.
thing, type in the company name, but I say go beyond page one, because some of the best
Okay.
companies and some of the best people, they're really great at SEO, which is search engine optimization. And so
Yeah.
if they do have, some search results that are a little bit questionable, maybe have some bad news articles or whatever it is, they may be skilled at burying that. And so that may be on like page 4, page 5. And so don't just,
Okay.
scan page one. If you see all the positive things, don't just say, okay, yeah, they're legitimate, they're good, that's it. No. You want to dive a bit deeper, and you want to go to page 3, page 4, page 5, however many pages, kind of go towards the end and see what's there. And then if it still, passes all of your checks, then you can start to dive a bit deeper.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I then say go to social media. Right. Social media, again, is your best friend aside from Google. And so I actually say go to Twitter. Twitter is really great because you can
Okay.
actually see, their tweets, their replies. What are people saying, right? Get a sense of
Yeah.
that sentiment. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? Just get a sense of that.
Yeah.
And Facebook is really great too.
And that's something that, historically I've recommended for job seekers too, is to be following these companies on social media that you're applying
Hmm.
for. Usually I do it from the angle of try to develop a relationship with them, or get to understand their culture, because it's going to make you coming into the interview a lot stronger if you know
Yes.
what they're up to.
Oh,
Those kinds of
absolutely.
things. But I've never
Mhm.
really thought about it from the angle of just to make sure that the company is real and to vet it. And it just makes so much sense
Mhm.
because I have figured out so easily and so quickly whether a company is real or not just by looking at their activity on their social media,
On their
maybe
oh, yeah.
link page or something like that. So,
Yeah, yeah. See, when was the last time they posted? Go in the
mhm.
replies or the comments on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. What are people complaining? Are people happy? Is it positive? All of those things are going to help you to actually make a good decision as to whether, again, it's a company that you actually want to align yourself with.
What do we do beyond Google and social media to make sure that these companies are real?
Well, I say reach out to actual people, right? So again, we have LinkedIn, which is an awesome tool, and so we can see people that are currently work there or have worked there in the past. And I would
Hmm,
say most people are usually pretty good at, if you send them a quick message and say, hey, I'm about to interview for this role. I would love to learn a little bit more about your experience. Do you have 5 minutes to jump on a phone call or a Zoom chat, so I can ask you a few questions? Hopefully, I would say most people are pretty good at responding, and that allows you to actually get information from
yeah.
someone that's actually attached to the company, so you can again make that decision. So once you've again done your own research, it's always good if you can to actually talk to a real person, someone else, that can give you their perspective on whether again it's a company that you actually want to align yourself with.
That makes so much sense. Like, find out from the people who are actually working there, and you're going to get
Hmm.
a better sense. And I mean, sometimes I think about the analogy of if you're shopping for an apartment or something like that, if you ask the people, ask the leasing agents or whoever,
Yeah.
how good is this apartment? They're always going to say, 100%. There's nothing wrong with
Exactly.
it. It's the best apartment complex you'll ever live in. Um,
Yeah.
but I always get a better sense of what it's really going to be like by talking to, the tenants or the people that have
Hmm.
been there a while. And I got information that our parking situation was going to be really terrible at our last apartment complex because
Oh, yeah.
I had a real conversation with, someone who worked there. So,
Hmm.
you know, draw,
Absolutely.
drawing that connection, I just think it makes so much sense to reach out and connect with people who are actually living it and to figure it out.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
so what would that look like though in terms of a reach out message? Let's say I feel awkward and
Hmm.
maybe I'm a little bit shy in reaching out to
Shy, of
people, but
course, of
what do you think?
course. Well, just what I was saying, I would say, you know what, just say hi. I'm currently in the interview process for this role at whatever the company's name
Mhm.
is. I was wondering if you have 5 minutes to chat. I would love to learn a bit more about the company and your experience and how you enjoy working there. If you have 5 minutes, it would be great if we could get on a phone call or a Zoom chat this week. Would love to hear from you. Thanks in advance. That's it.
Easy.
Super short,
Yeah.
simple, easy. Maybe send it to 2 or 3 people to increase your chances. I'm all about increasing chances. So just find 2 or 3 people, hopefully at least, even if just one responds to you, that's better than
Yeah.
none, right? So at least you can get that information. And then I think in addition to that, Glassdoor is another great tool because people are usually leaving
Okay.
their reviews on being working at the company or even interviewing at the company. You can find out some information from Glassdoor. So in addition to reaching out, Glassdoor is another really awesome tool that you can use to get some more information.
Okay. Wonderful. So
Hmm.
this is all really I would say this is making me very hopeful and positive, even during a pandemic, that I can get this
Hmm.
figured out. I can understand whether or not a company is going to be good for me and it's going to be
Hmm.
a good fit. Where I get a little bit tripped up, and really where I see a lot of value in this concept of doing a background check on employers, is being able to
Hmm.
go a little bit deeper to make sure that it's a good culture fit, or to make sure that I'm
Hmm.
I'm going to be actually happy or able to thrive in a company on a
Hmm.
deeper level.
Hmm.
So let's say two important values for me that are almost
Yeah.
non-negotiable
Hmm.
would be good, solid culture that facilitates mental health, and number
Yes.
two being diversity. Let's say that those are two important values for me. How
Hmm.
do I go into a company before even signing that agreement letter that I'm going to get
Hmm.
started with this company? How do I even have conversations with people to make sure that those two values are a part of the company?
Absolutely. As you were saying that, it reminded me when I was working for a company, and I would actually have a number of Black women that were interested interested in applying for roles at the company would reach out to me specifically and say, hey, I'm sorry to bug you, but I'm applying for a role at the company, and I want to get a sense of what your experience were like. I'm a Black woman, and I would love to know how they actually support Black people. And that's really important to me as I apply. Could I get 5 minutes of your time? So similar thing as, as I was just recommending, I was
Specific
actually on the receiving end of that. And I think that's interesting, right? Because people, yes, they know that they can do their own searches, but they want to get a sense of what it'd be like for them as a person, being someone from a marginalized community, to understand what their experience would be like. So that's why I think it's also really important to reach out to people, because yes, you can do all the research and find all of that, but find someone that maybe has a similar background as you and reach out to them to see how their specific experience is. So that's where that can be really helpful. Another tip I would recommend is a lot of companies now have employee groups, right? So based around whether it's a particular background, maybe around a particular hobby, whatever it is. And we're finding now that people are reaching out to those groups. So sometimes on the website, you can find out maybe who the lead of that group is. They're reaching out to that specific group and trying to find out, okay, how is my specific experience and my particular specific background or unique background, how is that going to be represented in the company, and am I going to be supported, right? So that's another thing that you can do. But again, I think it's also just has to do with also asking during the interview as well. So I like to ask those specific questions. I think, again, when you get to the end of the interview and they say, okay, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah,
that's where you can
ready to go. Yeah,
that's a prime background check opportunity, right? Because as much as they're asking you questions, you have this opportunity. And so, as you were saying, you want to know if they prioritize mental health. So I would say, what mental health programs do you have in place? I think especially now, given the pandemic, that is a very fair question to ask. And see what response they have. If they say, well, actually, maybe we don't really have anything right now, we're thinking about it, and they're a little bit wishy-washy, then maybe you might be like, I don't know if that's a company I want to work with. But if they list off all the different supports, maybe you get a budget for maybe therapy or whatever it is, that's maybe a good indication that's a company that you actually would be interested in working for. So I think it's leveraging the interview opportunity for sure, doing research and reaching out to people as well to get their experience and to get their perspective on those particular things.